Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I will be targeting both catfish and carp from the bank of Folsom Lake. Below in the video description, there will be a timestamp for my subscribers and viewers.
So one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of anglers make this time of year in the spring when fishing for catfish and carp is they'll often want to find the deepest part of the lake or cove and they're going to try and throw it out to the deep water. Don't do that. This is not the time of year to do that. The area I am targeting here is what's called a mud vein. So this mud vein itself is flat on one side and is deep on the other side. I am going to fish the flat side adjacent to the vegetation because the lake is at its fullest in the spring. Again, I've mentioned this in the past in many of my catfish videos. Where you, especially with these Northern California reservoir, where you catch catfish in the summer and fall and winter will not be the same area as the spring or vice versa with any of the seasons. So with the lake being at its max, I'm going to head to the very front of this mud vein. It is not a creek, but it is a vein, because with these highland reservoir in general, because Folsom Lake in general fishes a lot much more like a highland reservoir. It is a hybrid kind of reservoir. It is fed by two river arms and it has some lowland parts in the lower body of the lake. But the area I'm targeting is on the peninsula, and the reason I'm targeting the peninsula is because with the mussel closure, there are a ton of swimmers that are swimming in my traditional catfish spot on the main body. So I am up here where there aren't so many swimmers, but the concept is the same across the reservoir. You want to find shallow water and not a rocky back bay, but mud, because catfish and carp are going to relate to mud this time of year. Not just any mud, they're going to relate to fresh mud where it is being formed because the lake level has risen and the vegetation underneath will start to rot, and this will form a very nice clean mud bottom where catfish and carp are going to move up to feed. And this is the area I'm going to target, because more times than not, what a lot of anglers will do is they are targeting the wrong area. You can have the best gear, the best bait, but if you are not in an area with catfish, you are not going to get bit. It is as simple as that. And another thing I want to add to is Folsom Lake is a tough lake to fish for catfish in general from the bank. I call Folsom Lake one of the three Gorgon sisters of the Northern California reservoirs around my area. Those three Gorgon sisters are Lake Shasta, Lake Orville, and Folsom Lake. And in reference to what is a Gorgon, some of you guys might ask, it's Greek mythology for Medusa and her three sisters, or two other sisters actually, to make three. So these three reservoirs are extremely tough, especially if you are a new catfish angler, because more times than not, what a catfish angler, if you're new, is you'll catch a catfish in an area and then you get stuck to that area. You don't leave that area, and you come back to it year in and year out without realizing that if the water rises or drops, the fishes are going to move. Hence why a lot of anglers will often catch little to no catfish out here in these kind of reservoirs. They'll either catch a catfish or maybe a second catfish and wonder why they don't catch any more catfish. You need to be able to adapt to the rising water level, because these reservoirs could rise as high as 50 feet within a week, or they could drop as low as 100 feet within a month. So with that being said, let's start today's episode.
So now with that out of the way, I will be drawing a visual representation of the area I am targeting. The reason I am targeting this area, as I've already mentioned, is this is a mud vein. So what is a mud vein, some of you guys might ask? Well, a mud vein is a little fissure that is typically formed from spring runoff. What will happen is during the spring period, as we accumulate water and the reservoir rises, there will be these little depressions or cuts that will be formed in these shallow bays, which will be particularly weedy when the reservoir is dry during the early winter period. But when the water fills up, what this will do is create a giant bay. Then when spring arrives and the reservoir fills up, the vegetation will start to die off, thus creating fresh mud. The area I am targeting is at the front or the mouth of this little mud vein. I am not targeting the back because I'm looking for water between 3 to 10 feet. So I like to target the front of this mud vein, which will be about 8 to 10 feet. As for the tackle I'm using today, I will be using a medium heavy spinning rod. This is actually a very cheap combo I picked up from my local sportsman warehouse. The only thing I did was remove the line that was given in the combo and replaced it with 30-pound braid. A spinning rod is a great setup, especially when targeting both catfish and carp, and it is also very budget friendly for the new angler or the seasoned angler. The rig of choice I prefer to fish with when targeting both species in the spring will be the bolt rig. I've demonstrated this rig plenty of times in the past, and all it is composed of is a pear sinker to a small swivel and a hair rig tied on a sharp snell hook. When targeting both species, my preference is to use a panko corn mixture. Again, pack bait can catch quite a handful of channel catfish in the spring. So with the baiting needle, which can be purchased at bigcarptackle.com, all I will do is thread a few kernels of corn onto the hair rig. This way, I will be able to catch the fish in the corner of the mouth every time. When I'm targeting both catfish and carp, I will thread on quite a handful of corn kernel onto the hair rig. Because catfish tend to be a lot more voracious than carp, I will thread approximately 4 to 5 kernels of corn on the hair rig. Again, if I were to be targeting carp, I'll put on a lot less kernel of corn. Now all I'll do is take the pack bait and I'll just pack it tight around the lead sinker. Again, the amount you pack on will vary on water temperature. The warmer the water, the more I will pack on. Then I'll embed the hook into the pack bait, leaving the corn kernel exposed because I'm going to spike the corn kernel and the top of the pack bait with some of this quarter attractant liquid goo. Another thing I wanted to mention was I often get quite a handful of questions regarding if pack bait fishing is legal here in the state of California, and the answer to that is yes. The whole concept of pack bait fishing in this state is as long as you don't chum this bait freely, it is legal. As for the legality of using corn for bait, using it as a hook bait is perfectly legal. Kokanee guys use shoe peg corn all the time for their hoochies and to tip many of their lures for trolling. And you can definitely use corn as a hook bait to even go trout fishing in certain bodies of water. As long as bait isn't restricted, you can indeed use corn as a hook bait. It is a gray area because pack bait, if packed tightly around the lead, will fall in the same category as dough bait, often those offered for catfish fishing that you will find in dough packs and buckets at Bass Pro Shop. It also falls under the category almost similar to that of power bait. The only thing an angler can't do with pack bait is to feed the pack bait openly, so therefore it is wise that if you were to be using pack bait, you pack it tightly and let the water naturally break it down, very similar to that of the catfish bucket dip baits. So hopefully this answers the questions of whether or not pack bait fishing is legal here in the state of California. After I got both rods out onto the water, I have the rod on the right hand side sitting in about 5 feet of water, and this rod on this left hand side, I got it sitting in about 10 feet of water. I am lazy, so I am fishing these on bite alarms. You can definitely just use bells if you like, but I just prefer bite alarms because I am lazy. The rod on the left hand side ended up getting bit, and I knew right away that this was probably a carp because of the way it grabbed the bait. So I know I sound like a broken record, but the reason I use the bolt rig is so that way when the fish picks up the hook bait, they will often panic after feeling the sinker and they will bolt, hence why it is called a bolt rig. In the springtime, this will allow me to target both catfish and carp depending on the area I want to target. In the springtime, when I'm targeting an area that will have both catfish and carp, I will target the area with pack bait. This will allow me to catch both species simultaneously. However, as the spring disappears and early summer comes about, I will often target just one species or the other and not both species, because as the early summer period arrives, the species, carp in particular, will often still be found in the back bay, but will also begin to migrate out to their usual summer ground, which will often include the rivers, while catfish will move to deeper part of holes and will often suspend. This is a very nice small Folsom Lake carp, and I'll show them to you guys real quick. Thanks for playing, buddy. Off you go. Spring is here and the lake is beautiful and gorgeous. I don't have to bring a brolly because the weather temperature is still relatively cool, so I don't need to hide away from the sun, and I can actually start this fishing session quite late, around mid-morning to the evening. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit, and this was actually a very violent bite. Upon getting hooked, this fish began performing death rolls immediately, therefore telling me that I knew I got myself a catfish. The death rolls give me the telltale sign that this is a channel catfish and not a white catfish. Currently at this reservoir right now, we have the catfishes on all three phases of their spawning pattern. We have some pre-spawn fishes in the shallow, and we have some spawning fishes on their nest, which will be incredibly difficult to target, and we have some post-spawn fishes that are cruising the shallow, hunting to regain their strengths. I am targeting a mixture of some pre-spawn fishes and some post-spawn fishes. Again, I don't like to target spawning fishes. Some guys are all about targeting spawning fishes if they could pinpoint the bait directly onto a structure that the catfishes are using to spawn, but I don't like to do that. So therefore, I will be targeting this muddy back bay with this mud vein for catfish and carp in general that are still feeding, whether it be a pre-spawn fish or a post-spawn fish. This is a very nice catfish for this time of year. I'll show him to you guys real quick and I'll prep him for release. This is also the reason why I carry a landing mat so the fish doesn't end up hurting itself. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit and off you go. Some anglers will target catfish strictly with just protein this time of year, but I prefer to target them with pack bait, especially if I'm doing a dual combo trip. The rod on the left hand side ended up getting bit, and I knew that this was a carp, because more times than not when a carp strikes the bait, carp are not very hesitant, unlike catfish, who will start by taking the bait away first prior to yanking the rod completely in. Unlike a channel catfish, carp will not roll. A carp will run side to side and hug the bottom really tight, whereas a channel catfish will often perform death rolls when they get hooked. That is how I know I've hooked a carp and not a catfish. Although there are some exceptions, such as the white catfish. The white catfish will fight often like a very small carp when hooked. It will run side to side, and many whites I've caught will not perform death rolls. Today I am killing two birds with one stone. I know a lot of my subscribers and viewers alike don't like the carp fishing, but I really do enjoy catching both species. I don't mind which one I get, but depending on the time of year, if I just solely want to target one or the other, I will specifically target them with their designated bait. But in the springtime, if I want to catch both species, I will fish with pack bait. Contrary to popular belief, catfish, particularly channel catfish, love picking up pack bait. In the spring period, I find that channel catfish will often not be as picky about bait as they will be later on in the season, like summer or fall. This is a very nice Folsom Lake carp, and I'll show him to you guys real quick before prepping him for release. He is very pretty and full of colors, and definitely a post-spawn fish. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit, and off you go. The rod on the right hand side got pecked apart by turtles. Yes, turtles are a constant problem in the spring, especially when targeting this shallow water. So while I was rebaiting the right hand rod, the rod on the left hand side ended up getting bit, and I knew right away that this was indeed a channel catfish. This fish had quite a bit of weight on it, so I knew that I got myself a really nice channel catfish for the spring period. Death rolls began immediately, and I knew that I've gotten myself into a channel catfish. I've landed quite a handful of channel catfish on spinning gear for many anglers whom are wondering whether or not they should invest in casting gear. Spinning gear is great if you're on a budget or if you're relatively new to the sport of catfish fishing. The die-hard catfish anglers will say otherwise, but out here on the west coast, casting gear is often only really used if you are going to encounter really big channel catfish, and we only have a handful of those lakes out here in Northern California that can produce really big channel catfish. For example, Clear Lake is one of those natural lakes that I will indeed fish with casting gear because there is always an opportunity to hook a catfish above 20 pounds, so therefore I don't want to lose that opportunity, so I will use casting gear. However, for many of the reservoirs that dot our valley system, spinning gear is perfectly fine. I've landed a ton of fish on spinning gear. As long as you just play the fish slowly and carefully, you can indeed land fishes on spinning gear. This is a very nice channel catfish for Folsom Lake. And hopefully, as demonstrated, you do not need to go out there and toss your bait into the deepest part of the reservoir. These fishes are in the shallow, and you should be hunting the shallow this time of year. This is a classic example of a fish that has been rummaging around the dead vegetation that I've been talking about. What came out of this catfish butt is not goose poop, as many anglers would think. No, the catfish are not eating goose poop. These catfishes are rummaging around the dead vegetation looking for vertebrates such as crawfish or snails around this dead vegetation. Hence why these fishes are here. Again, this is a very nice channel catfish for Folsom Lake. This fish is probably above 10 pounds but nowhere near 15. I am very glad I caught this fish. These fishes are so cool looking, especially during the early spring period or the middle of spring currently as we are in now. They got this very nice tint of blue and yellow, and I think they look ultra cool. I'll get him revived and back into the lake because I am not retaining any fishes today. Thanks for playing, bud. Hopefully today's episode helped those anglers that are curious about Folsom Lake in the spring. The rod on the right hand side ended up getting bit, and I knew that this was a carp. The telltale sign of a carp picking up the bait is often it'll just run side to side, as I've already mentioned. I am happy to catch both species, unlike some anglers who will only target just catfish. I think pound for pound, most carp will outfight most channel catfish. Unless you got blues or flatheads around, carp will often outfight both channel catfish or any of the bullhead species present in our Northern California reservoir. Most of the carp present in this area are post-spawn fishes. They've already finished their spawning and are often long, lean, and a little bit skinny. However, come summer, they will regain their weight and they'll pull a lot harder. Right now, because they are post-spawned, many of them aren't pulling as hard as they would typically do during the warmer weather period like summer. I'm still very happy that I end up hooking into them though. I welcome both species, regardless of whether or not it's a carp or catfish, because I am a multi-species angler. This is a super long, lean carp, very pretty nonetheless. He's lost a lot of weight, but hopefully come summer, he'll regain that weight. He's very lean and shows the telltale sign that he's been done spawning and he's trying to pack on weight again. He's very pretty though, so I'll show him to you guys real quick before prepping him for release. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit and off you go as well. So while dozing off on my phone, I wasn't paying attention and the rod on the right hand side received a very violent bite. I was very lucky that the line got caught around the bite alarm and I knew right away that this was a very nice channel catfish. I am not a trophy fisherman, so whatever comes my way I am happy to take. I am not picky, so therefore I am happy that I got bit. This was indeed a very nice channel catfish. He was performing death rolls like there were no tomorrow, and the way he struck that rod, he struck it like I owe him money. This was a very nice channel catfish again. The crocodile rolls this fish was performing tells me that he is indeed a very large fish. I am tempted to keep reeling, but I don't want to lose this fish, so therefore I ended up loosening the drag just a little to let him pull. One thing with these larger channel catfish is you don't want to bend out the hook. So therefore I will take my time because I don't have casting gear and I will play him slowly on this spinning rod setup. The biggest drawback I have found to the spinning rod combo setup is often the reels and their drag. More times than not, I find that I would much rather prefer to have a loose drag than a super tight drag with these cheaper spinning rod combo setup. My personal preference is to have a looser drag rather than a tight drag. The reason for this is because I'd much rather let the fish pull and tire itself out and slowly tighten up the drag to let a bigger fish slowly play itself to the bank towards me, whereas if I were to have casting gear, I wouldn't be as forgiving, because casting gear in general will tend to have a lot more torque and will play these fishes a lot easier than spinning gear setup would. This is indeed a very nice channel catfish, and I am very happy that I caught this fish. So I will show you guys where this tiny little hair rig have hooked this fish. Yes, these tiny little hooks used for carp can indeed hook these channel catfish, despite them having a much bigger mouth. Again, this is a size 6 hook, and it just grabbed the catfish in the corner of the mouth. This is indeed a very nice channel catfish. He is very bright, very healthy. I was super stoked to catch this fish. This fish had quite a bit of weight on him, and I think he is very cool looking nonetheless. Some people hate catfish and carp in general, but I really do enjoy fishing for both species. Thanks for playing, buddy. Rest up a bit, and off you go. As soon as I got the left hand rod back out, the right hand rod got bit, and I knew that this indeed was a channel catfish. This channel catfish began performing death rolls right away, therefore letting me know that it was a channel catfish and not a carp. So hopefully today's episode demonstrate that an angler with some basic knowledge of this reservoir can indeed target the species quite successfully in the spring. The key takeaway of today's episode is so that I can demonstrate that with some basic knowledge of this reservoir, these are the kind of areas an angler should look for in the spring season. A lot of anglers, like I've mentioned, make the mistake of wanting to fish the deepest part of the lake for catfish in general, but this is not the time of year to do it. In the springtime, warm water species will often be found in the shallow, but by knowing what the species is doing, an angler can maximize his or her success. So hopefully this explains my take on why I am targeting this area. This was indeed another nice little channel catfish, and I'll show him to you guys real quick. He's not big by any metric or standard, but he is a very pretty Folsom Lake channel catfish. I'm surprised I didn't hook into any white catfish today, but I am happy to catch both channel catfish and carp today. So therefore, I will prep him for release, let him rest up a bit, and off you go, buddy. Overall, it was just a great day to be out on the reservoir. Spring is here and is rolling along nicely, and sooner than later it will be over and summer will be here. I was very happy to catch a handful of catfish and carp today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, tight lines y'all.